These days I get so many messages and comments from people that are struggling to still get their first software job. They're confused about it because the news says that the software industry is recovering and hiring is going on again.
You know, I think it's incredibly difficult to look at a single company or even a handful of companies' layoff notices and draw conclusions about the broader economy.
But their experience is a lot different. So in this video, I'm going to explain why so many people are struggling to get their entry-level job and what you can do to increase your chances. So back around 2014, I was introduced to software development, web development, and this whole thing about coding and tech. I was working a job in pest control, and I did not want to be chasing rats and roaches for the rest of my life. But I also didn't want to go back to school for a degree. So I started to learn how to code with the typical front-end languages, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now I worked relentlessly every single day for almost a year, studying, learning, and building, until I decided to test my skills and knowledge, put some resumes out there to see what kind of responses I would get. Still at that time, I didn't feel like I was the best at coding. I didn't feel like I knew everything I needed to really get a job and be productive, but I tried applying anyway. Now I applied to a lot of jobs, but not as many jobs as people are applying to today. I started to get phone screens and in-person interviews within about 4 or 5 months of applying. But that's the thing though, I spent less than a year learning and practicing, and even less to actually get my first job. I got multiple interviews with no formal experience, no internships, and honestly my projects weren't anything amazing. Now you fast forward to today and a lot has changed. You see it all on social media, the frustration that people are going through to even get an interview. They've been applying to hundreds of jobs and they can't get anywhere. You can see it in the search results. If you go to Glassdoor jobs and you search senior software, you'll see a very different number compared to junior software. And then it seems like when you do find a position that says junior, it still requires some experience. So how are you supposed to get experience if you can't get experience? So let me explain why that is and what you can do about it. Now the why. It's interesting because all the websites that you're using today were the same websites that I was using back in 2014 to learn how to code. I wasn't using anything different than you are today. So if people have always had this access to free resources to learn how to code, why does it feel like you're competing with an ocean of applicants now? And the honest truth is that you kind of are. Back when I got into the field as a self-taught developer, people were generally still pretty happy with their careers. Everyone was still going into the office 5 days a week. The tech life, it was popular, but it wasn't like how it is today. But back in 2020, something very interesting happened, as you all know, and that created a weird dynamic in the job market, especially in the tech field. You had way more people that were focused on trying to find remote jobs because they were either afraid of getting sick or they saw that as just an opportunity to do something different with their career. So what's the first job that people think of when they think of remote positions? Software developer, software engineer. So now you had an extremely large amount of people that was suddenly really interested in this field. You had self-taught developers, you had recent graduates, you had people that did have tech experience but weren't into coding that wanted to get into coding, and they're all competing for the same positions. Now some people were pretty lucky to get entry-level positions during this time period between 2020 and 2022. And that's because a lot of companies were doing mass hiring. That time period of 2020 to 2022 was like party time for the tech industry. Everyone was hiring, all these companies were making so much money. But once things went back to normal, these mass hirings started to turn into mass layoffs. So now you add another group into this field of people that are searching for these same positions. People that were laid off that already had experience. So during this time period of layoffs, I saw people really struggling to get their first job. But people like myself that already had experience couldn't really relate to this. I actually was able to change jobs pretty easily during the same time period. And I would still constantly get emails and messages from recruiters that are trying to get me to join their company. So you may be thinking, well, why would companies even hire junior developers if everything seems like it's catered towards mid-level and senior level people? From what I've seen in my career, junior developers are hired for one of two reasons. The first is that they want someone that can be molded into what they want them to be for their company. And one thing that is very frustrating for companies is when they hire someone that is really senior, they're very quick, very intelligent, but they're also very stubborn. They have their own way of doing things and they feel like their way is the right way. And if you've been working in this field, you know, you've worked with people that the more senior they get, the more stubborn they get. So they look for junior developers so they don't have to deal with this, and they can have someone that they can build into the type of developer that they want. Someone that is fresh and new. Now the second is obviously money. Junior developers don't require much money as someone that's a mid-level or a senior level. And if a company is focused purely on their bottom line and they have the time to wait for a junior developer to get up to speed, they will pay less money. This saying will always be true. Time is money. So if a company has time, then they don't mind paying little money. If a company does not have time, then they're gonna pay a lot more money for someone that can come in and just start getting to work. Now the reasons why companies won't hire junior developers. Now there's one big key that a lot of people are missing when it comes to junior level positions. As I mentioned before, when I started in the industry, I was going into the office 5 days a week. There were remote jobs, but it wasn't as popular as it is today. And honestly, going into the office was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me while I was a junior, because I was able to work hand in hand with senior level developers and I learned a lot very quickly. The problem is that a lot of people these days want a 100% remote position as a junior developer, and companies know that that is not a good recipe for success. As a junior developer, you need more support, you need more hand holding, you need more mentoring, and this is done way more effectively in person. I'm a senior developer and I've seen the difficulties of working with a 100% remote team. You have to have someone that knows how to communicate, you have to have someone that knows the processes, and it's a lot easier if they hire someone that kind of already has an idea about this versus someone that has no idea at all. Companies also know that junior level developers can be a bit more unstable. And what I mean by that is that you know you're gonna get hired for a salary that you might not be as happy with. And your goal is to get to the 6 figures and higher. But the best way to do this is to jump around from jobs. It's very inefficient to stay at one company for years and years hoping that you finally get to the salary range that you want. This has always been true in the tech field, especially in software, that people stay for a year or two and they move on to another company where they're gonna get paid a lot more. And then they stay for a year or two and then they move on to another company. So with companies knowing that we kind of have that reputation, they're very hesitant to hire junior developers because they don't want to invest this money and time in someone that's going to leave after a year and a half. So now the big question, what can you do to increase your chances knowing all of this? The first thing is that you have to humble your expectations. I would not be focused on trying to get a remote position. Companies are trying to go back into the office, and this is your best opportunity to try to get a junior job because they don't want somebody that's 100% remote that's also still learning a lot. I would also not be focused on the big FANG companies. Your only goal is to get professional experience on paper. Companies that are smaller and less well known tend to be more favorable for junior developers because they just want somebody that's interested in them and that can do the work. I would also not expect to get paid a lot of money. I took my first job and I knew I was underpaid, but I didn't care because that first job opens the door for everything else. So it wasn't the best position that I wanted. It wasn't the best company that I wanted. It wasn't the best salary that I wanted, but I got the job. If you're in the web development, you can do freelancing. Now this is a benefit for 2 reasons. You can make money on the side, but then you can also start to put some professional experience on your resume for the clients that you work for. Whether this even be a community center, a small business, anything that you can get to put on your resume. You also want to make sure that your resume gives you the best chance of getting the attention of an actual recruiter. So you can check the link below for the Get the Call bundle where I explain all of this in more detail and give you some templates that you can use when you're applying for your positions. So yes, the market for junior and entry-level developers is tough, but if you're one of the few that don't give up on yourself and your dream, you continue to be persistent with learning and applying until you get to the point to where you are employable, then I feel the right position will find you. That's what I have for you in this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.